Hello and welcome back. Just wanted to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about how to use Microsoft Word in order to write lab reports or other type of scientific work that you're going to be doing. I'm not going to cover everything. This is not a how to write lab reports or anything like that. This is just a few tips and tricks about what I expect from you as we are going through this class. So one thing to keep in mind is that when you're using Word, right, it's designed to make things look pretty. So when you have things, obviously we have a lot of chemicals. We can talk about the acetone molecule, or we can talk about the, let's talk about something even simpler. Let's talk about ethane, and we can say it is C2H6. Now, please, when you are typing stuff in Word, please make sure you're formatting it properly. I don't want to see C2H6 right there. I want to see that you're properly using subscripts and things like that. You can do it up here in the toolbar, or you can use key commands, whichever you like. I like my key commands, so I'm going to use Control equals to do a subscript. Control Shift equals, which is a plus sign, is the superscript. Oops. On a Mac, you're going to use Command Shift, or Command equals and Command Shift equals to do the subscripts and superscripts. Or again, you can click things in the formatting tab up here. So when you're doing things like chemical formulas, please make sure to format those subscripts correctly. Same thing if you are doing chemical equations. Silliness. I'm a Mac guy, so when I do things on Windows, I sometimes hit the wrong key because the, oh man, I put it way over here. It put my window way over there. That's just funny. Thank you, Microsoft. All right, to form CO, let's undo that, CO2 and water. All right, so if you have a balanced chemical reaction, right, C2H6 gaseous plus O2 gaseous. Oh, hey, what just happened there? Well, it turns out there are some built-in shortcuts in Word. If you want to make arrows and things like that, you can. You can go to the insert, and then there's special things, and you can look for that. And that's nice, but you know, if you just quickly want to make an arrow, if you are typing along, you say O2 gas, and you say dash dash greater than, it turns into this right-hand arrow. It's an ugly right-hand arrow. It's not the world's prettiest one. You could definitely find prettier ones if you tried, but it's good enough, and it's a very quick thing to do. So dash dash arrow will give you that arrow sign. And then you're going to have CO2 gas plus H2O gas. So again, I expect that in all of these things, you're going to be properly formatting your formulas and things like that to have subscripts or superscripts where needed. So if I had something that had a charge, you know, if the H2O had a charge of plus, then I'd go ahead and put the plus sign there, again, as a superscript. We don't usually get H2O with plus, so I'm not going to worry about it. We can also form acids, H plus. Okay, so if you were doing that, you'd format that as a superscript right there. So those are things absolutely basic. You've got to format chemicals and chemical formulas properly, chemical equations properly. Also, I expect that when you're using equations in Word that you're going to format those properly. Now in my class, I'm not going to have you do the calculation steps in Word. You're not going to have to show this step, then this step, then this step, then this step, all the work you did. You can do that on paper, and that's just fine because these things are very, very tedious to write out. But I do expect you to show a few formulas in your work. You're not just going to say, oh, you know, we use some formulas to do this. You're going to say, oh, this is the equation we use. This is how we use this equation and things like that. So you need to be able to put in nice looking equations. So gas law equations. Right, you might have that V1 over T1 equals V2 over T2. And I have students regularly who try to put that into their lab reports. Please don't. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with the formatting of that. Okay, at the very least, you should make those subscripts. But really, if you've got a formula with fractional things like that, it's usually better to format it well. And that's where the equation editor comes in. in Word. The equation editor used to suck really bad, like 10, 15 years ago. It was awful and it was horrible. They've improved upon it a whole lot now, and now it's actually not too bad. I actually find that it can make some really nice formulas. So if you go up here into the Insert menu, usually somewhere, usually on the right-hand side, there's equations. You can just click on that. You can also press Alt equals if you're on a PC, or I believe it's Option equals if you are on a Mac, or Control equals. I can never remember. I just do it by rote sometimes now. And so let's go ahead and put this equation in. And you'll notice there's all sorts of things that come up when you're in the equation mode about fractions that you can do. There's superscripts and subscripts that you can do, radicals, integrals. We aren't going to involve too many of things like that. Arrows, sometimes we might want some of those fancy arrow keys and things like, or arrows that you get right there. But let's go ahead and start with a fraction. So I'm going to want v1 over t1. So I'm going to start with this kind of fraction. And then I can put in my things. Now, the keys and ways that works is not always intuitive, but you'll get used to it. So I'm going to type v, and then I'm going to type my script over here and a subscript. Oh, gosh darn it. What did it do? So Word equation editor is not perfect. I mean, I'm just like, I just want a subscript on that thing, but it thought I wanted to insert a character with a subscript, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I hit delete. So if you really wanted to, you could highlight that one. You can't really see very well on my screen. That's highlighted, and then you can put in the subscript there. And so now I can put a 1 down there. That is a bit tedious, I have to say. I don't like the buttons and things like that. Oh, you can't really see those buttons. Let me move those down a little. I don't really like the buttons and things like that up there so much. I really much prefer to use the keyboard. I'm a keyboard kind of guy. So I'm going to show you that instead of having to use all those buttons for basic formatting things, subscripts, superscripts, fractions, and stuff like that, there's a lot of built-in keyboard commands that you can use if you're a keyboard person that I think save a whole lot of time in trying to make formulas. So, and these actually, a lot of them come from LaTeX, depending on how you pronounce it, which is a mathematical typesetting language. You can look it up. It does all sorts of neat things, but Word adopted a few of the conventions from it to make life a little bit simpler. So here, a subscript, very, very common thing we're going to want to do. So if I type my letter and then I type an underscore character, so underscore, and then my subscript, t_1. When I hit space, Word will automatically format that to t subscript 1. It's a very, very good time-saving feature. Now, on the other hand, if I wanted to have t ABC, if I go like that, sometimes it'll work. It'll say ABC. But sometimes if I want ABC and, oops, ABC and, oh, as soon as I hit space, because sometimes we want to label things with a few more characters, it tries to put it as a new character. So it turns out if you want to put multiple words or things that it's trying to auto-format for you, you can put that in brackets, and it should work. It didn't just work. T underscore ABC and 1, 2, 3. There we go. I had to press space twice that time. I'm not entirely sure why. So there you go. You can put things in brackets. Now, it put it down here in brackets. Oh, that's right. I know why. My brain is fuzzy. T underscore parentheses ABC and 1, 2, 3. Why isn't this working the way I thought? There we go. Parentheses, not brackets. My apologies. All right, so now I'm going to say equals. Oh, wait, let's get rid of all those other things because we know it's actually just over t1. There we go, equals. Now, before, in order to make the fraction, I had to make v2 over t2, and if I would have to go click and all those other things. But it turns out that Word understands that fractions are also very common. So if I'm going to get my v2 by doing v underscore 2, and then I'm just going to hit divide, and I get t underscore 2, and then I hit space. And now if I hit space again, it automatically formats that as a fraction for me. Very good time saver. Now it turns out there's some times where you do want an inline fraction, so you do actually want it to look like one over the other just because of the way you're designing it. And in that case, you do want to actually use the fraction things here, and there's an inline fraction there. There's no way that I know of on a keyboard to get that inline fraction in the equation editor. So there we go. So v1 over t1 equals v2 over t2, entered in very nicely. Now, a lot of times we have formulas where we're plugging things in or doing things. If you have a bunch of things that you're doing, the best thing to do is to make it all one equation. So instead of getting out of this equation and then typing something and then putting in another equation right there, it's actually usually best to make one line, one equation. Not always, but a good thing. So if I wanted to type something in there, I'm going to go back into my equation. You know you're in the equation when it gives you that little box outline. Right now I'm outside the equation. I left arrow, I'm now inside the equation. And I type something, and then I can do more equations, which is, you know, exp, oops, e to the 2.3.53, right? Oh, so I just showed you something. How do you do a superscript? You do a superscript by doing the caret sign. So I'm going to go back over here. If I wanted e to the 2.53, e caret 2.53, when I hit space, it does that as a superscript. Now here's a really cool one. If we wanted to put in the isotope carbon 14, I can use the caret and the subscript simultaneously. So I can do caret 14 subscript 6, and then you do have to do a space here, and then space C. Now when I hit space after that, it'll automatically format that as the top 14, bottom 6 C. And you can do that on the right-hand side too. If you're talking about ions, you can have SO underscore 4 caret 2 minus. Ah, but it didn't like the 2 minus, right? So what do we do when we want to make sure that it puts things in properly? Is we do SO4 caret parentheses 2 minus. Then when we hit space, it'll properly format that. Again, you can do all that stuff with these things up here, but it just saves a little bit of time. So make sure that you're properly formatting stuff in equations, you're properly formatting your equations. One equation, one line is a general good rule to follow, and it really helps you along. I'm trying to think if there was other ones that I wanted to show you. Oh yeah, special characters. What if you're talking about the delta character, if you're talking about epsilon, if you're talking about any of these other special characters we do use sometimes? It turns out that Word understands that sometimes you want to do those, and so it actually has shorthands for them. So if I wanted to say my heat equation, that Q is equal to m times C sub p times delta T, right? You can put the times character in if you want, that's fine. But if you really want that fancy little bullet, you could find it up here and be like, okay, where's that fancy little bullet thing? I didn't find it, whatever. But it turns out, if you type \bullet and you hit space, then it turns that into one of those little tiny times bullets. M times C underscore P bullet. And then we want delta T. Now, I happen to know off the top of my head that the key to get delta on the keyboard, at least on a Mac, but I don't know it here. So I'm going to hit \, and I'm going to type the Greek character. Now, if I type delta and hit space, it gives me the lowercase delta, which was what we use for like partial charges and things like that when we're doing Lewis structures. But I want the capital Greek letter delta, and so I type \, delta with a capital D, and it gives me that. And so I've got Q equals MC sub P delta T. So most of the Greek letters that you might be familiar with, epsilon is going to be there, or what other ones do we use in this class? I can't think of any at the moment. But any of those Greek characters that you're used to using, you can just type \, and the name of them, and you'll get that Greek character. Or pi, there you go, \pi. And if you can't remember how to type in pi, or you can't find it on the screen. So those are just some very good hints for doing things. Other than that, you have some freedom in how you want to format these. I don't have exact things, but I do want them to be well done. Be aware too, and I don't think I said this in my other videos, that although subscripts and superscripts and things like that are necessary and required when you're doing Word documents, in Excel charts, it's very difficult. It's not impossible. You can do subscripts and superscripts, but it's very difficult to do, and so I don't require them there. So your axis titles and plot titles in Excel do not have to have those subscripts and superscripts. And so when you paste those ones from Excel into Word, remember using the paste special as an enhanced meta file on a PC, as a PDF on a Mac. It's okay if those titles and stuff don't have subscripts and superscripts that are proper. I'm okay with that. But anything typed in Word should absolutely have proper subscripts and superscripts. All right, the other thing I wanted to show you in Word is about formatting tables. We often take tables from Excel. So I'm going to pop down here to Excel, and I want to grab, let's say, my trial data table, like this one. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that to the clipboard. You can see I get those marching ants is what they're called, if you didn't know. I get the little marching ants, which tell me that that's the active selection that's being copied. And I'm going to go over here to Word. And if I hit paste, it pastes it in, but it's not exactly that pretty normal Word table that you're used to with the proper formatting and the boxes around it and things like that. So I want to format that properly, and you can do it manually. But if you notice down here, when you paste it in, it gave you a little paste options thing. And you can look at the different options. And so here it's using the destination style. Here it is keep source formatting. Here it is link and use destination styles. What I generally do is just use destination style. There is the using link and destination style. And that, again, can be good. But just like before, is if we make changes to this table, it doesn't go back into Excel, and we don't want to do that. So I generally, personally, just use this one. It just says use the destination format. Now you've got those kind of normal borders that you get from Word, and it's actually easier to manipulate it. You can do things like, oh, I actually don't want this column in my Word document, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that column. So I selected the column and I hit delete. So you can do things like that. Remember that all plots, all charts, all things like that should all have labels. So if I was having this table here, I labeled it table 1, blah, 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 telling me about what was in that table. I'm not going to do that now. You can look at the documents that I gave you for how to write lab reports in order to see that information. All right, I think that's about all I wanted to show you today. Again, as always, if you have questions about how to format something, how to do something in Word, I'm happy to help you out. I have a lot of experience doing those kind of things. I wrote my 400 and something odd page thesis in Word using a lot of very advanced Word features, so I know a thing or two here and there. Thanks so much. Have a good day.